From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Our topic today is Kids Voting USA, and with emphasis on Kids Voting Idaho. For our viewers who might not have watched our program about a year ago, we announced that this was a project that was taking place in Idaho. As a matter of fact, it came into being in December 1994, and there was an experiment with this program in the municipal elections of 1995. We're coming back to you today, to our viewers in Idaho and across the Northwest, to report on what the success of this program was in the 1996 presidential election in the state of Idaho. And we're so pleased to welcome four guests today who have been very involved with this project in this state. And I would add immediately that this is a project now in 40 of our 50 states as of 1996. I first of all welcome to the program Paula Davis, who is the Executive Director of Kids Voting for Kootenai County. And I should add in introducing Paula that this is the first place in Idaho that has experimented with kids voting, and it is, I'm sure, your hope that it will expand to other parts of Idaho. And next to her is Jim Thompson, who is the publisher of the Coeur d'Alene Press. He is also the chair of the board of directors for kids voting in the state of Idaho. And Jim, we welcome you to the program also and know that you have great interest, and we'll talk about that in the program about what might happen across the state of Idaho in the future with this project. And next to Jim is Donna Elward, and we're very happy to have her with us. She's a member of the board of directors of kids voting in this state, and she also has been very instrumental in the work in the schools. And we want to talk with you, Donna, about the curriculum and what's happening before and after the election with that program. And last, I'm very pleased to welcome to the program Lori Barnes, who I give great credit for starting this program along with one of the employees of the Coeur d'Alene Press and introducing it to our state. And she was the not only spearheaded, but was and is the state director of Kids Voting Idaho, and she has a lot of information about what's going on across the United States as she attends the national meetings. To all four of you, thank you for coming. We are very much appreciative of that fact. Lori, I'm going to start with you, and we want to get right into discussing what is happening in the United States, and as Idaho is one of those case studies. Would you bring us up to date now that we're through 96, and for our viewers who have not been with us before on this issue, when did it start and how are we doing in the United States with this program?
You're talking the whole United
Yes.
States. Well, I could tell you more next week because our convention is this coming weekend in Arizona. But as you know, we did have 40 states that were involved this time, over 3 million children voting. And it was just tremendous, you know, as you can imagine, voting for the president and, of course, their senators and the local officials, just like we did here in Kootenai County. 40 states on now, and I'm sure we'll have them all by 1998.
And Idaho, I'm sure that you're proud of the fact that they did join on, and this is our first one, as I indicated, for a national election, but we did try it a year ago. We'll be back to you in relation to some of those facts. But before I move to Jim with my next question, I would ask Laura to follow up on what is the merits of this program?
Oh, good question, good question. As you know, there are 2 or 3 purposes for kids voting, and I think the main purpose was really shown this time because we talked about, Tony, the number of people voting in this election is fewer than has been since do you
1924.
Yeah, it was way down, which is a big concern. And apathy is the biggest problem in our country when it comes to the elections. And so the program was put together to fight apathy. Number one, to educate the children, the future voters of our country, about the importance of being involved in the process. But a side benefit that we have found through the years is that when the children are more involved, the parents become more involved. And so we have seen that as the children learn these lessons in school, they have the curriculum, they bring homework home, they sit at the dining room table with mom and dad, and they talk about the issues and the candidates and why do we vote and where do we vote and when do we vote. And so it's been really a dual purpose. Number one, educate the children as to the rights and responsibilities of voting. But number two, that it's a family affair and you get the parents involved. So those are the 2 main.
And we know from some statistics after this, about 6 years nationally, that there's a larger voter turnout
Exactly.
of the parents. Some children, encourage them to do so.
And perhaps as important, not just that more are voting, but that they're better informed. And we can talk about that when we get into our local, but when we did the exit poll in '95 and we polled the parents said they were better informed on the issues and on the candidates because of their children, and that's so, so important.
Jim Thompson, since the inception of this program in Idaho, you have served as chair of the board, and go back and tell our viewers a little bit, particularly that are not in this state, how that came about and where do we stand now after really 2 runs with this program here in North Idaho.
Well, Tony, our board is solidified. It's probably still run by the core group of people that we put together initially, a cross-section of business people and leaders from the community. And except after we completed the municipal elections, we realized how important it was to get some representation on the board from the teachers and that were actually helping implement the curriculum in the schools. We found a lot of support in the community, and a program like this wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the support of the business people, I guess, that are the primary donors to this program. It's all privately funded. And Kootenai County has been very fortunate. We've received just a tremendous amount of support and to help get this program off the ground. After completing this last election, what we're looking forward to now in the next couple of years is the ability to expand kids voting to other cities in the state of Idaho. And there's been a lot of interest and a lot of inquiries. And in my business, I've had the opportunity to talk to publishers of newspapers and other communities in the state of Idaho. And they have a lot of interest in it. But what it's going to take to get these programs kicked off in those other cities and make it available to the rest of the kids in the state of Idaho is for the leadership in that community to come forward and get it organized and make a commitment to it. And the publishers that I've talked to have indicated an interest in helping get that accomplished if the leadership identifies it. So
there's really a lot of components, aren't there? One is you have to raise money, and the board that you serve as chair of has a lot of diversity on it from different parts of the county and has access to a lot of other leaders. Would you give and then in addition to the raising of money, you have to have a lot of volunteers. Give our viewers, just in this locality here, and when we talk about Kootenai County, we're speaking basically of Coeur d'Alene and Hayden Lake and Post Falls and Rathdrum and so forth. Give our viewers some idea of the kind of funding you need, and we're going to come to Paula in a minute. She'll give us some of the nitty-gritty, but talk a little bit about both of those points, of funding and volunteers.
Well, actually, Kids Voting USA provided us with a formula and what they anticipated our cost would be per student. And off the top of my head, Lori, do you remember?
It's about $2. You need to figure about $2 per student to get the program started.
And as we became involved with kids voting in Kootenai County, then we budgeted for making that opportunity available to roughly 20,000 students. In order to get that accomplished, and the reason for that funding, I guess, if you go back and think it through, is we need to provide curriculum to grades K through 12. Each grade level would have a different curriculum so you can understand what that's about. The curriculum is designed to approach them at a level that they're ready for, to help them learn the responsibilities and provoke thoughts that get them involved in that voting process. It's not our desire to teach them who to vote for. All we want to do is teach them about the responsibilities and how to gather information and how to make decisions that they can be comfortable with.
With that, Paula, you must be smiling because following the presidential results that are in, at least I have before me the results from this county, and there were 4,692 students voted K through 12. Would you respond to that? That's quite an undertaking, and out of 49 precincts, tell us how many precincts were covered, and just a lot of the intricacies that went into the election day.
Well, actually, Tony, the 4,692 kids that voted were only the ones that counted because they only darkened one circle. We probably had another 50 to 100 that weren't counted. So actually it was a little bit better than what the results have. I was delighted. In the election in '95, we had 2,700 kids vote, and out of about 18,000 kids, we had around 4,700. So we didn't quite double, but we definitely made great strides.
Now I want to interrupt you to say that that number is impressive when you realize that the young people had to go with parents to their voting place, not just their school where they were.
That's right.
So that extra effort had to be there.
Yeah, the extra effort was there, and I've heard lots of stories from parents that have said, oh, I came home and I had gone to vote, and my kid's sitting there going, come on, take me to vote. I haven't voted yet, and it's really important that I vote. And that's great. That was just, it was wonderful to hear. We have 49 precincts in Kootenai County, and we actually had a physical presence in 44 of those precincts. And that was a full setup, just like the adult voting tables, with the voting booths and ballot boxes in 44 precincts, and there were 42 civic organizations, businesses, and school groups, and numerous individuals that helped on Election Day. Over 500 volunteers just on Election Day.
Because from 8 to 8, you had to have volunteers because the county can't finance this. It has to be your own personnel.
Exactly. The county not only can't finance it, but they are staffed to just the level that they need for the adult voting. So they weren't able to answer questions about kids voting. And the lines, every school that I went to on Election Day, there were lines from between 20 and 45 minutes, which was really encouraging to me because the lines for the kids were also 5-10 minutes long. So I thought that was great.
So they were going together. It also, I guess, creates some demand on when the parents vote because the students getting out of school at 3 are going before they go to school.
Yes.
There were very busy times. What else can you tell people who are looking at this program in other parts of Idaho or other states on what else you had to do other than bring this massive group of volunteers together? And Jim's talked about money, delivering all the ballot boxes and the ballots. And
just the logistics of 44 precincts, 42 organizations, 40 schools, 4 school districts, 6 private schools. It just kind of all builds on itself. But it's so exciting to see the process and hear kids tell what they're learning and see things like National Kids Voting Day that we had on September 24th and see the whole community, not only the communities, but the whole county coming together. It's a massive effort. It's well worth it. It's wonderful to see that outcome, and that's what I think kept driving everyone that was involved in the program. Let's see what this outcome is. It looks so good. So the enthusiasm was there on all levels, which was just great.
And the feedback you got was very positive.
Very positive. There were very, very few negative comments, only 1 or 2 that I can even think, and it was things that people didn't realize. They would say, oh, well, the curriculum is simplistic. Well, yeah, when you're dealing with kindergarten and first graders, it is simplistic. They weren't looking at the high school curriculum and how technical it really can get.
One final question before we go to Donna that has to do with the physical setup. Now, there had to be meetings with the election officials to make sure there's room for you. And
Many.
Explain that to us.
Oh, boy. Well, as you know, we first talked to Dee Dee Beard at the Elections Department, and she's all for the program, but now how are you going to carry it off? Well, we went through, decided which precincts were large enough and which were not big enough to have us physically in there, and then getting together with the judges of those precincts in whatever situation they were in, whether it be a school or the fairgrounds or a fire station. Where can we be that will not hamper the flow of traffic? And so it was just a double checking, check here, call this person back. But then again, it's well worth it, and everybody, including all the people that were involved in the regular Kootenai County election, were delighted at how well behaved everybody was. Said nobody had, that I have heard of, had any problems at all.
Now, Donna, we're going to turn to the real nitty-gritty. Jim talked about the curriculum, and not only are you on the board of directors, but you're deeply involved with the schools. Again, I would like to request that you educate our viewers who are not involved in this, what do we mean by that curriculum? How is it carried out?
Well, I was involved with the Coeur d'Alene School District, but what we did was representative of what all the other school districts did in Kootenai County. But they start out with a curriculum, which is then the teachers receive this curriculum in the fall, and then they are given an orientation session, an in-service on how to use the curriculum so that they're prepared to use it. We give them some examples, things to search for, and they find them, and they've just become familiar with it. The curriculum, like we have said, is useful across the grade levels. It's different for each grade level. And the teachers can choose to use whatever they like out of the curriculum that fits what their class need is. They don't have to do the entire curriculum. They pick out things that they would find exciting for their class. Not only did they do things like writing essays about if I were president, or doing projects on determining who is eligible to vote, but they also did a lot of fun things like baking cookies. Hillary Clinton's, hers with the chocolate chip cookies, and Elizabeth Dole's pecan cookies. And then this was at the elementary level, and the children baked those, and then they tasted them and they voted for which cookie they liked the best. We're just teaching the children that we vote about all kinds of different things all the time. The one school did an election for a piece of playground equipment, and they just determined by doing an election which playground. We just vote on all kinds of things all the time. Let's see. There was a project that that a math class did that actually my son participated in, and at Halloween he dressed as a pollster and went trick-or-treating door to door. And he had a bag for each of the presidential candidates, and they were to place their piece of candy in there. And then he was to graph that. And so they have really extended the projects, and the kids are coming up with these on their own, things that they can do to make the process fun. There were lots of things at the high school level, too, that they did discussions of all the initiatives in different areas of the curriculum. Nuclear waste and the physical sciences, and the bear baiting initiative and the life sciences, and I could just go on. But
And I know that Paula coordinated with the rest of you a function prior to the election at the courthouse when you had a lot of students to come. And briefly, Donna, tell us about what some of those wishes were, or the subject matters that they shared with the public.
Generally, the children were to create a wish, which would be for possibly their county, the country, or even their school. Generally, the wishes had to do with keeping safe, crime levels, peace, those types of things. But some of the children got very specific. They had school elections going on, that they wanted a new school for their school district, and they were very vocal about that. This was all taken very seriously by the children, and as well it should have been.
I'm going to throw this out, and Lori maybe the one that wants to feel this. Any of you feel free to do so. But around the United States, now that we've been doing this for some period of time, the temptation is always there, and it's fine to compare with how the kids vote, compare with how their parents vote, and is it identical or is there some differences? I know that we have the results here with us here on the table of how they vote in the presidential election around the country in 36 of the 40 states, but we have these results here in Idaho. Lord, do you want to start with, do they vote identically, or is there some differences in how they vote?
Oh, I'm sure it's just as different as it is in families. You're going to see some children that naturally think as their parents do, and I think in looking at my own, I know with I had 4 that were in the program voting this time. Some voted the same as I did, and I know that some did not. But the point of it was the discussions that we had at home were wonderful, to be able to sit there and have these intelligent discussions with your children. And they knew things that their homework had been to go home and gather campaign brochures from all the candidates, or find newspaper articles about the different candidates, watch the TV ads on the candidates. And I found myself being pulled into it and doing the same thing. So whatever the end result is, Of course, that is important, but I think that the thing that is key is that they are learning to get involved in the process, and the parents are having to learn to keep up with their kids. If they're going to have an intelligent conversation with their 5th grader now, they're going to have to be up on these issues and know what's going on. So it is wonderful. And I think we saw in our area, I think we saw pretty close. You know, there's a few that went 1% one way or 1% the other way, but I think that you would see that most of the voting was pretty similar between the parents and the kids.
Anyone else? Jim?
I'd just comment that Lori hits on a key thing, this participation. What the children are finding out is that the government runs off of the participation from the people, and community forums, public debates. We found that that many of the debates were better attended by kids in the area than by the balance of the population.
That's another thing happened, did it not, Jim, too, that when we have candidate forums that are sponsored by several organizations, Lori's one of the moderators in that process, and you even used some high school students to ask questions.
We did. In fact, the candidates, when I talked to them afterwards, it was the students' questions that really made them think. And they thought, matter of fact, since we did this in 1995, when we were setting up the candidate forums for this time, some of the candidates said, "Are you going to have the kids asking questions?" Because that made them real nervous.
I don't want to let our time get by without some wonderful little letters. Donna, you brought some letters with you from some of the kids, and would you share that with our viewers?
We asked the children to tell us why kids voting is important, and I will share 2 that I have here. I have a letter here from a 3rd grade student at Boris School, and he writes, "Everyone should vote because people need to care about voting, because thousands of people gave their lives so we can have freedom in our country. If the other person won that you did not vote for, support the winner. When we grow up, we will already know how to vote." And that was from Brian Oliver at 3rd grade. And I have one from Jessica Birch. "Kids voting is important because it helps children become aware of the voting process. So when they are older and ready to vote, voting is not a whole new and different thing. Voting makes our country special. Not all parents vote. If kids vote, it encourages their parents to vote too. So if you're not old enough to officially vote, try kids voting."
I think those 2 quotes give a real clear picture of what kids voting is all about. Another thing that I'd like to pursue is from the long range. We're talking about today how the parents and the kids both would do more research, and it would affect, and Lori, I think we've had something like about a 4% improvement in the states that have been using it for the adults. But let's talk now for a moment, and this is out to all of you to respond to. What is the long-range benefit from the perspective of the kids? Let's leave the parents out for a few minutes. Once this has been in place, let us say 15 or 20 years, what do you think the outcome will be because it's been part of the curriculum and they've been doing this for a long period of time?
I love your quote. She talks about the 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and responsibility. And hopefully that is what we accomplish with the children, and that this just becomes part of their regular education, part of their regular routine in their lives, and they show up to vote.
And it won't be a new experience when they get to be 18? Or
And not scary. It's something I know. I grew up in a very political family, so on my 18th birthday, I went and voted, or went and registered. And that was just normal. It's something that I had always expected to do, and it wasn't that scary. But even now I have friends that don't vote. They don't know how. They don't know where to register. They don't know who to call to find out about registering. And so I think it takes a lot of that away, and they see the responsibility, and they see the participation, and there's no more, well, my vote doesn't count anyway. You know, they see that it does vote, and it's very important. And it is a privilege that we have here that we should use.
So you're suggesting an attitudinal difference?
It really is.
And I would add to that it doesn't end with you casting your ballot. The governing process means following it and keep abreast of it, participating in the outcome, working together. And those are some of the topics that we'll address now that we've accomplished actually getting the kids to the ballot box. The next step is to work with them share with them the responsibility of participating in governing themselves.
I really hear you saying something else that's very significant here, in addition to becoming a voter, is that a number of them may actually become active in the process and run for office or serve in a point office because of this, that they might not if they had not had that introduction.
I'm sure that's true.
Lori, would you like to add to this?
Oh, that everybody, I had all those thoughts, you know, everybody was saying it, but I agree completely, and I think maybe what Jim said at the end is where my thoughts were going on that we've seen even the high school students getting more involved in other things. For example, when we had the high school students manning the polls to help the younger children, now these students are ready to become real volunteers in the real elections when they're old enough to do that. And I think any time that you feel that you have a part in a process, you're going to be more involved. 15 years from now, I think we're going to have more people in our community and in our state that know that they can make a difference. And because they know that, they're going to be more involved. Not just at the ballot box, not one day every 2 years.
In every election, we have some evidence. I believe it was in the state of Pennsylvania, I forget which congressional district, that the incumbent won re-election by 10 votes out of, hundreds of thousands of votes. So it can be that close and important. We're getting close to being out of time, but I particularly would like Jim and Lori to address this question, and that is, give advice to others who are going to start this program up and they haven't done so. I know, Jim, you was talking about talking to some editors of papers around the state and publishers, but what, in the short time we have, what kind of advice would you leave with them?
The advice would be, if you can find a core group of people that are willing to take on the responsibility to make sure you see the whole picture and all of the people that are going to be involved, and solicit their involvement before you try and tell them how it's going to be done. USA Kids Voting gives us guidelines, but it's up to the individual communities to implement them. But it's a process that involves a lot of people.
Lori?
I would add to that, not only does Kids Voting USA give us guidelines, but they give us training. This is a tremendous program. If you're in the state of Idaho, as the executive director, I would come to that community and help train them. If you're in a neighboring state, they have someone there to help them. If they have the desire to get this program started in their program, in their community, there are people to help them. That would be my advice. Give us a call.
Well, but how do we help them right now? Can we tell people how to contact us, Tony?
Yes, we sure can. If you'd like to give them a telephone number, they can contact us at North Idaho College and we'll share it with you. But if you'd like to give a telephone number, that's even better, a number that they could call.
And what number would that be?
I think probably to go ahead and call 773-2021.
Let's do that again.
773-2021. That would be my number.
And that's area code 208.
208, I'm sorry. Thank you, 208.
But again, 773-2021. With that, I have to bring the program to conclusion. I thank all four of you. It's been most informative, and congratulations on a very successful program. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed as much as we have bringing you this subject, kids voting, and what it's all about. And I would like to invite you to be with us again next week when we'll discuss yet another important issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.